So now I want to introduce you to our first speaker of the day, and his name is Dr. Matthew Rowe. He's an optometrist and assistant professor of pediatrics at vision therapy at Midwestern University at the Arizona College of Optometry. He's the developer and course director of the college's sports vision elective and serves as course director for the pediatric optometry course and the diagnosis management of non-strabismus binocular disorders. And he also precepts third and fourth year students, which is always a lot of fun. I like doing that too. And he has worked with, involved with managing athletes on all skill levels and taken part in Major League Baseball's East Coast Pro Showcase, which consists of working with the visual systems over 100 high school athletes selected by the League Scouts. So I want to give a warm welcome to Dr. Matthew Rowe.
Let's move this up. There we go. Thank you. So I'm incredibly excited to be here. I absolutely love the field of sports vision. It's been something that's been around for a while, but just recently in the last 25 years, it seems to have really taken steam. And so I'm going to share with you guys my philosophies behind sports vision, where the field is kind of going, and also how I do my evaluations, how I do my trainings, and where I bring literature in to help me out in my decisions, and where I kind of just go with my gut. So since I'm going to be talking a lot about different equipment out there, I just want to make it known I have no financial disclosures. The equipment I'm going to talk about is the equipment that I personally use or have decent experience with. So to start off, I know it's early, but I want you guys to get into the mindset of a baseball player. And I'm going to show you this clip, and I just want you to think about whether or not you would swing at this pitch or if you're going to let it go by.
The 1-2 pitch on the...
And so I'll show it again.
The 1-2 pitch on the...
That's as much time as a baseball player has to make up their mind. So when we watch it, and anyone who knows Kershaw knows he has a killer curveball, and we see that and it went right down the pipe. And we get upset that they didn't swing. This is his job. His job is to know that that's going to be a strike and he's going to swing at that. But we had 450 milliseconds to analyze that entire pitch, watch it go right into the catcher's mitt, and realize that was a strike and get very upset. Umpires have an easier job than the batters do. So the sports vision world is literally just 200 milliseconds. It's faster than the blink of an eye. You need them to be able to react as fast as possible. And so the mantra that we use over at Midwestern University for our sports vision clinic is we're going to get our athletes to see clearer, we're going to get them to react faster, and by doing that, we're going to get them to play smarter. Some of you might be familiar with this infographic right here. And it came out a few years ago, but just talks about an overall analysis of what the visual system requires a baseball player to do. The average fastball, back when it came out, was around 95 miles an hour, and that takes about 400 milliseconds for it to reach the batter from the moment that it leaves the pitcher's mound 60 feet away. The issue, though, is in that 400 milliseconds, the first 100 is you realizing that the ball is in the air. So you can't even analyze anything in that point of time. And then the other issue is at the final 200 milliseconds, you need to be able to get the neurological system to fire up and get the signal down to the muscles to swing the bat around in time. That only leaves the athlete with around 75 to 100 milliseconds to make up their mind about what they're going to do. And this is why baseball players make millions of dollars, and they are only right 25% of the time. So where have we been? And this is going to be a little bit of background about the field. And like I said, it's been around for a while. There's actually really no start date to it. But before we were able to get good research on it, we had to rely on anecdotes. And a lot of that came from journalists. So back when Babe Ruth was one of the greatest players, who still is one of the greatest players of all time, but back when he was tearing everything up with the Yankees, he apparently went to Columbia University and he had his eyes evaluated. And a journalist stated that his vision was 15% better than the average person, which really means nothing, because vision is not just 15% better. There's a lot more to it. So my guess is that they found that he was able to read like 20/10 or something on the Snellen chart, and they said, look at that, he's so much better than everyone else. Ted Williams, on the other hand, it was known, and he made it known, that he could actually see the seam of the ball when it was coming towards him. A journalist went and published an article stating that he had him rub extra pine tar on his bat, hit the ball, and Ted Williams could tell him exactly where the pine tar was located on the seam of the ball, and he'd go and pick it up in the outfield, and sure enough, there it was. Ted Williams refuted that story, but he did state, I can see the seam of the ball, and what this really comes down to is that even back then, They knew vision was an incredibly important part of what makes an athlete successful. And that was really, really well explained by Pete Rose, who, if he wasn't a gambler, he'd probably be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And for those who don't know, he has the #1 hit record for Major League Baseball. And he was brought up in the 70s, a group of video people came together to put together a course to say, how are you so good? And they were going to make a bunch of money off of this. And all he said to them was, it's simple. I see the ball, I hit the ball. And so you can't make money off of a video if it's just 6 words long. But once again, vision was what was driving everything. So we started to get all of these anecdotes, and it started to become really interesting. There were some case reports coming out in different journals, and now we actually start to get what I believe to be the beginning of the field, back in the 70s and late 70s, and that's because this is when practices actually begin to open up. Some of the prominent ones at this point in time, we have Dr. Arthur Cederman. He was the author of The Athletic Eye. He opened up a practice in Philadelphia, and in that practice he worked with Olympic athletes, professional athletes of all sports, and he put all of his experience together into this book. Dr. Donald Tague, he's the A-Team founder, and he still is incredibly active in the community. Then Dr. Harry Wayne, who created the Wayne Saccadic Fixator, he published this book in the middle here, An Insight to Sports. And I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit, because there's a very interesting quote that actually led to the discovery of one of the most important skills in sports vision. So in The Athletic Eye, which came out in 1983, so now we're looking at 36 years ago, and this book is still used by a lot of sports vision docs. He went through chapter by chapter and discussed all these different visual skills and how they related to an athlete and why they were important. And then at the very end of it, he actually made a 30-day training program. And it was there for the athletes to use, and it was pretty much a lot of stuff just working on your dynamic visual acuity, your eye-hand coordination, and it was just one of the first times that we had like a really good training program to go off of. We really don't use that training program anymore. There's a lot more science and literature out there that kind of makes things a little bit more easier and exciting for us, and it differentiates us from just the sports vision world. And that's really important because there have been a couple of researchers who have tried to refute the role of sports vision for an athlete, and they use kind of these basic training programs and said, yeah, this does nothing. But all those articles that say sports vision doesn't exist is because they're literally using something that came out 36 years ago to make their decision. The field has really moved on since there. And now we get to the explosion of research, and that's going to be in the 90s. And in the 90s, you start to get names like Dan Labey, David Kirschen. You also get Joan Vickers, who discovered the quiet eye. And you also get this development of what the visual system is going to require. And so over on the left, we have the sports vision pyramid. And so this is actually a very important piece of information that I use in all of my evaluations and in all of my training. And it just breaks everything down very simply. On the very bottom, you have monocular skills, and then you have binocular. You maximize these two areas, you're going to make the decision-making better, your eye-hand coordination better, and that will maximize your performance on the field. It's a nice, simplistic way to look at the field, and it makes your evaluation so much easier and so much more consistent. And with this, industry is starting to realize this is really exciting, and we're getting all these really cool pieces of equipment coming out. The unfortunate thing, though, is that because there's so much equipment that's trying to vie for this new field in optometry, it's kind of like they come out and they realize they're not making as much money and they go ahead and pull away. So Nike used to have a sports vision program with them, and they created the SPAR-Q, which is now the Synaptic Sensory Station. They sold their information to Synaptic. You had the Nike strobe glasses, which are now the Synaptic strobe glasses. And basically Nike felt they weren't making as much money as they wanted. They sold it to a different organization. People from Synaptic, if I'm saying that wrong, please correct me later. And then you also get the Nike contact lenses. And this became really huge from Mark McGuire. Mark McGuire was quoted as having used these. He said that it helped out with his ability to see the seams in the ball. I still have baseball players coming to me asking me about these contact lenses. And I personally have not found any way to even remake them or see who even has them. So you have to be careful. You have to really look at what piece of equipment is going to be one of the newest and greatest things, but something that will also last. And so that you're not just kind of spending a lot of money and then there's no updates to it.